Strike two for the woke DEI racist. After finally getting a few pages of the trans Nashville shooter's manifesto leaked, a newly released police report is revealing that the Louisville bank shooter who killed 5 and injured 8 back in April was likewise targeting upper-class white people as a way to push for increased gun control laws. What a doozy, right? Remember all those commercials back in the day that were like, this is your brain on drugs, and it was someone slamming their head into a frying pan like an egg that was being cracked? Well, this is your brain on wokeism. The 25-year-old shooter said something in him snapped over the fact that Kentucky doesn't have red flag laws because he felt anxiety and depression in part over climate change. And so in a bid to save lives, supposedly, he took lives. That's a sly trick by the devil to make people feel sanctimonious about the evil they are perpetrating. I mean, honestly, give up the shtick about wanting to save lives if you are more than happy to take them yourself. Congrats, buddy. You've now killed more people than law-abiding NRA gun owners ever have, despite all your vitriol against the NRA in your manifesto. I'm so sick of this perversion by wokeism which calls evil good and good evil. And while the shooter was stopped by a hero cop who had to use lethal force, we also remember the rookie cop who had only graduated from the police academy 1 month prior, but who was shot in the head and was left with a long road to recovery. Now, earlier I said strike two, but if you include this other doozy by the Biden administration this past week, then it's honestly strike three for them. And that's because it turns out at least 3 of the transgender identifying Americans that the Biden White House honored this week died attacking strangers as well. That's what the Federalist is now reporting. Remember how I called it last night when I played that clip of Karine Jean-Pierre trying to pretend that 26 transgender Americans were murdered by straight white Christian males in bigoted hate attacks? Of course, she couldn't outright say that because it's not true. But she's a true lefty, great at crafting language to suggest that understanding implicitly for her audience. Well, like I mentioned last night, anyone who looks at the stats knows that transgender homicides are by and large related to drugs, violent relationships, and sex work, not to Trump supporters. So now let me read for you updates from the Federalist article because it gets even worse than I realized last night. So first up, we have 26-year-old Manuel Tortuguita Tehran, a man who pretended to be a woman. According to the Human Rights Campaign, he was merely an indigenous, queer, and non-binary environmental activist. But it turns out he was part of the Forest Defenders, those hardcore left-wing paramilitary forces camped out in the forest surrounding the construction of the new Atlanta Training Center for Cops. Cops have been shot at, and have had Molotov cocktails thrown at them by these Antifa and BLM members. The article says, quote, "What HRC didn't mention in its description honoring the man who used they-them pronouns is that Tehran was only shot by officers because he fired first. When cops barged into the camp in an attempt to clear it of protesters, Tehran blasted 4 pepperball rounds through his 9mm pistol at them. His projectiles seriously injured a state trooper, which prompted nearby officers to return fire," end quote. Next, we have Banko Brown, a 24-year-old woman who pretended to be a man. She was shot and killed by a security guard at a Walgreens in San Francisco when she allegedly threatened to stab the security guard multiple times when he refused to let her leave the store with what he believed to be stolen goods. And lastly, we have 28-year-old Devani Jure Johnson, a man who pretended to be a woman. He was homeless on the streets of Los Angeles, or a vibrant artist who moved to the big city to transition, if you listen to the HRC, when he was shot and killed by a security guard at a store for allegedly attacking the same said security guard with a screwdriver and a fire extinguisher. What all these stories have in common is that these were deeply unwell people who needed Christ in their lives, not a cocktail of drugs and hormones and propaganda designed to encourage their worst vices so they could continue spiraling. They're now dead and could have killed others. Our White House will celebrate them, ensuring that more young people go down this path of destruction. It is beyond sickening. But like we talked about last week with that reformed criminal who saved the life of a Texas cop during a shootout, redemption is possible. Those stuck in sex work, transgenderism, or drug abuse need our prayers. They need help, not to be placed on a pedestal.